Welcome to 100 Yards of Football. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. And today's video is our college football history video. It's the 1979 Sugar Bowl between Penn State and the University of Alabama. So, one more time, if you like the video today, please come to me and share it. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. Well, 1979 was a special year, especially January the 1st. It was during the time when I was a freshman at the University of Arkansas and I had finished up my first semester as a true freshman. And I came home to my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, and the college football world was rocking in the South because you know what? When Alabama's at the top of the heap, it's must-see TV. They was taking on a Penn State team. It was coached by Joe Paterno, who had two undefeated seasons in 1969 and 1973. But unfortunately, they wasn't voted national champions. So this football game was special because Penn State came in ranked number 1, Alabama number 2. Boy, the Sugar Dome, New Orleans. It was 50 degrees outside that day, but inside the Superdome, it was like 80 degrees. The breeze was moving. It was almost like you can go out to that pond and you can fish. Two teams, two great coaches. But what I took about that 78 year was how special, going into the New Year's Day Bowl, how many special players played on that scene that year. You had Greg Roberts at Oklahoma. You had Emmanuel Tobin at SMU. You had Kellen Winslow at Missouri. Ted Brown, North Carolina State. Billy Sims, Oklahoma. Charles Alexander, LSU. Jerry Robinson, UCLA. Johnny Johnson, Texas. Kenny Easley, UCLA. Hugh Green from Natchez, Mississippi, Pittsburgh. And Al Harris from Arizona State. But all eyes was on the New Year's Day Bowl, the Sugar Bowl. Get to the game. It was a defensive battle that you're probably not going to see right now in our times of college football. Penn State came in with the number 1 ranked defense in the country. Alabama, I can't remember, but I believe they was a top 10 defense. But the biggest thing took from that game was that Chuck Facina was an All-American quarterback at Penn State and had an outstanding year. And the University of Alabama, their defense held him in check along with Matt Suhey, who went on for fame with the Chicago Bears, and Mike Gooman. They held Penn State to only 19 yards rushing. They held Chuck Facina from 15 to 30 for 181 yards passing and picked them off 4 times. And that Alabama defense was all over the place. But what came to my mind is how the D-line dominated the game. Curtis McGriff, Brian Braggs, Marty Lyons, Wayne Hamilton, and the linebackers were marvelous that day. Barry Krause, Ricky Gilliam, and my man Rich Wingo. And when you look at that game, there's only a few key plays in that game. Let's go to the second quarter when the score was tied 0-0. Alabama had late end of the field and was looking to run the clock out. But Tony Nathan had a key 30-yard run to put Alabama inside Penn State territory. And what's so ironic about that was that Joe Paterno and Penn State called 2 timeouts, thinking they were able to get the ball back to make something happen for halftime. And you know what? After that Tony Nathan 30-yard run, Jeff Rutledge went back, the star quarterback for Alabama, and hit Bruce Bolton on a 32-yard touchdown pass to put Alabama up 7-0 at halftime. And you know what's so ironic about that? Bruce Bolton was from the 901, my hometown, Memphis, Tennessee, senior wide receiver. Then let's move on to the second half. Big time plays all over the field. Well, Penn State got on a small drive. Chuck Facino got hot and took Penn State all the way down the field and hit Scott Finsky on a 17-yard touchdown run. 17-yard touchdown pass. Mr. Finsky made a hell of a catch at the back of the end zone, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And all of a sudden, Penn State had the momentum 7-7. But then the key play, which I think changed the whole football game, Luke Eichner. Remember that name in history, Lord. Luke Eichner. The game was going back and forth in the third quarter, tied 7-7. Both defenses playing real well. Penn State defense was really playing real well. Matt Millen, Bruce Clark, Rich Malott, Pete Harris. But Luke Eichner took a punt back 62 yards to the Penn State 10-yard line, and 3 plays later, Major Ogilvie took it in from 8 yards out 14-7 into the third quarter, Alabama rolled tide. Then the fourth quarter, both teams playing field position, both teams punting. Alabama punts, Penn State punts. Both defenses playing at a high level. Everybody looking at the crowd going wild. The Alabama band, dun, 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 dun. Penn State band bringing that East flavor to the Superdome. But with love with 7 minutes to go, Alabama has the football. Jeff Rutledge runs the option. He makes a bad pitch. Penn State recovers on the Alabama 19-yard line. It's about 6 minutes to go now. Matsui goes up the middle for about 5 yards. And then Chuck Facina hits Scott Finksy at the goal line. Phenomenal tackle by Don McNeil, all-star cornerback, All-American from Alabama. Hits him at the 1. Now Penn State has 2 shots to get in the end zone to tie the game. Third down. Penn State runs the great Matsui up the middle, and Rich Ringo stops him cold. He only gets 18 inches. And then Penn State calls timeout. The play of the game, 4th and 1. Only 18 inches to go. Chuck Facina hands off to Mike Gooman. And as you see on the image right there, your young man from Florida, down in South Florida, Mr. Barry Krause, first-round pick of the Indianapolis Colts, hits him head on. And Bama has a goal line stand, and the whole crowd goes crazy. And Barry Krause is knocked out cold on the AstroTurf. But what I liked about it, that was hard-nosed football back in 1979, January the 1st. Barry Krause gets up, runs off the field, and the University of Alabama fans go crazy. Both teams punt back and forth, but the Alabama defense, they was the stars of the game. Shut down Penn State. Let me give you the stats again. Held Chuck Facina to 15-30 for 181 yards. Picked them off 4 times, sacked them 5 times, and only allowed 19 yards rushing. So the great man that played hellified that day, Ricky Gillum, Murray Legg, Wayne Hamilton, Curtis McGriff, Marty Lyons, Brian Braggs, Randy Scott, Jim Bob Harris, true freshman safety from, you know what, Athens, Georgia, had led his team to a state championship the previous year, and E.J. Jr. Congratulations to the national champions that year, the University of Alabama. The postscript about after the football game as Alabama won the game 14-7 is that Alabama split the national championships with the USC Trojans that year. Alabama was voted number 1 in the UPI poll. SC was voted number 1 in AP. And based on the fact that USC had came to Birmingham that year and beat Alabama on their home turf 24-14. A great USC team. They had Paul McDonald, Anthony Munoz, Ronnie Lott, Dennis Smith, Eric Scroggins, Chip Banks. And Alabama won their bowl game. And USC had a loss that year to Arizona State, led by All-American end Al Harris. But what happened was that USC won their bowl game over Michigan 17-10. So the nation had to have a split vote. But when it's looking, all things come to the end. There was 2 great football teams, USC and Alabama. But one of the best defensive teams down south, the University of Alabama, the 1978 Crimson Tide. And the 19 Sugar Bowl was one of the best defensive efforts ever in college football history. So kudos again to those young man names that I named that allowed only 19 yards rushing that day. Allowed Chuck Facina, held him to 15-30, 181 yards, 4 interceptions, and sacked him 5 times. Murray Legg, Wayne Hamilton, Curtis McGriff, Brian Braggs, Marty Lyons, Barry Krause, Randy Scott, Jim Bob Harris out of Athens, Georgia, and E.J. Jr. out of the 615 Nashville, Tennessee. So my final words about the University of Alabama and that outstanding defensive effort against the Penn State Nittany Lions is that I'm going to go by this group. When I was a freshman, it was one of my favorite groups. They had a lead singer by the name of Larry Blackman. And he had a song that goes like this. Yo, pretty ladies around the world, I got a weird thing to show you. Tell your brother, tell your sister, tell your mama, because it's about to go down. You know what? Roll Tide went down on January the 1st, 1979 against Penn State from a defensive standpoint. And they were up by the great group of Cameo and their lead singer, Larry Blackman. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it. We surely appreciate here 100 Yards of Football. And thank you for supporting us through all this time, because we surely appreciate it. We wouldn't be where we at right now on a wonderful platform. And God bless to the man that made it happen today, my wonderful producer, the youngest member of 100 Yards Football, my man, Logan Landers. Thank you, sir, for this morning. Be blessed. Enjoy the rest of the week. I'm Vincent Turner of 100 Yards of Football.